Okay. So, hello everyone, and welcome to this four-part interactive workshop. Each one of the parts can rest on its own, and each one of the parts, I hope, is going to be connected to each other. Our topic for today is how do we disenthrall ourselves? How do we wake up to um, uh, the consciousness that we need, the reality that we need to move into our true role as human beings and to um, I hate using the term be all that we can be, but how can we learn how to do that? How can we learn how to be our highest self? Little bit of background, although I think not we the folks who are on the call right now don't need it. Um, what do we mean by creating a world that works for all, which is our primary goal? Um, as I've said to people, this isn't a cult. I'm not pushing either a personality or even an idea. A number of us, perhaps thousands of us, perhaps millions of us, have this notion of creating a world that works for all living beings. But they don't say it that way. They may have other formulations of that. William McDonough, the architect who wrote a very, I think, important book, Cradle to Cradle. He talks about how do we love all the children of all species of all time. Now, I think that that is a mega meta vision. If you don't like my vision, you can take his. And if you don't like either one of those, my friend Mark Anielski says that we can create an economy of enduring happiness, an economy that's based on love, not money. We've gotten to the point where we equate economy with money. That's not the case. Economy is something that you need to parse out and measure and look at and focus on, and we can do that with love. Um, so that gives you an idea of what it means for me, for what I mean when I'm saying creating a world that works for all. And it also gives you an idea of what I mean if what by the number of people, the number of organizations, the number of systems in the world that fall short of that ideal, that are not about creating um, a living systems on a living planet, which means that you have to ask yourself, um, if these aren't your goals, if that's not your vision, what is? What is your vision? What's your vision of the world that we're living in right now? I mean, we right now are the beneficiaries of our world. And I'm saying that because each one of you is using electricity right now. You know what electricity is and you're using it. That puts you at the tippy top of our planet right now. What are you doing with your time that when you're there? Um, I've been to a number of societies. Remember, I tell you, I at some point in time, I'm going to sit down and count them. I'm guessing somewhere around 120, 130, 140 different cultures around the planet. Many of them don't have electricity. And I've lived in the society. I've taken my bath in the canal that has the crocodiles in it. Um, Everybody tells me they've been fed, so I I make sure that there are people between me and the crocodiles, you know. Um, yeah, how often do those crocodiles get juicy Westerners, you know? Um, I've eaten meals in the dark with my hands because in that culture you don't use utensils. Um, Sitting on on a dirt floor. And when you do that, it changes your perspective on what needs to change in our world, in our society, even in our human society. So, what is your vision? Where are your goals? Where's your willpower? It's amazing how strong and powerful people can be when you're talking about changing somebody else, anybody else. It's amazing how many excuses come up when it's time for you to use your willpower to change first you. And we'll get to explore a little bit of that today. And where are your values? I do a whole segment, a 2 or 3 hour segment just on values, the values that will get us to a new society. We're not going there today. It'll be fun to do that, but we're not doing that today. Um, what we're basing today on is something that some of you saw recently, and if you didn't, you're going to see it again right now. Um, and that is the words of Abraham Lincoln, who, when I heard these words, as a young kid, they moved me, and every time I hear them, they move me. Um, and so Lincoln said, I guess I'm going to share this with you too. So Lincoln said, the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves. Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. We will be remembered in spite of ourselves. We, even we here, hold the responsibility and hold the power and bear the responsibility. We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth. Now, when Lincoln was saying this, he was talking in the context of the bloodiest and the most divisive war that America has ever faced, a war with itself. That war has never been over. The war started in 1787 when they signed the Constitution of the United States with a divided heart. A large part of that heart was listening to the ideals of Thomas Jefferson, of each human being having, um, as he said, I can't say it better, inalienable rights. And those rights include the right to your life, the right to your liberty, and the right to the pursuit of fulfillment, however that is meaningful for you. At exactly the same time, the people, half the people of the United States were in the other direction, and half of those people included Jefferson also in denying life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness to a large part of our own population. We were doing that in 1787, and we're still doing it. It's time for us to elevate, and it's time for us to do something different. And we need to be the ones that take that time to move in a new direction. Um, our challenge being um, how do you heal a fundamental schism? Well, we know how to do that. And the way to do that is blame those people over there, make sure they're the enemy, and demonstrate against them so that your side wins and then everything is perfect. Now, that's the for those who are still wrapped in our various social divides, our left-right divide, our black-white divide, our rich-poor divide. They think that they can resolve the problems in the context of that problem. Okay. And we know better. We know different. We know that if all of that stuff happened exactly the way it's supposed to happen, it won't solve anything because the root of the problem is not in our political system. The root of the problem is in the consciousness that created the problems in our political system in the first place. The root of the problem goes way beyond 1787, goes way beyond the 1500s. It goes way back to the time when our consciousness started to divide. Okay. Our consciousness of we are one with the earth, and then some of us thinking we are above the earth, we're above all of the earth beings, and we're also above all of the human beings that don't think and act and look like us. We get to solve that problem. This is where Lincoln's words are prophetic. Um, we get to nobly save or meanly lose this best chance for healing our earth. This doesn't mean the earth is in any way in danger of being destroyed by human action. We're way too puny for that. We can destroy our ecological niche. We're doing a good job of that. And we can take several tens of thousands of species down with us. That's unfortunate that we're doing that. And then the earth will continue on. Consciousness will continue on because consciousness does not reside solely in human beings. And somebody else will step forward and we'll try this notion of self-reflective consciousness, self-reflective holonic consciousness again. Um, I'm betting on raccoons. Um, they got thumbs. So, so what we have the opportunity to do right now is to disenthrall ourselves, to do two things. First of all, disenthralling this being right here who's talking to you and all the others of us who are live on this call and all the others of us who may encounter a recording of this at some point in time. Each of you have the opportunity to wake up, to get rid of the cobwebs in front of your eyes, to disenthrall yourselves. And then each one of us has the opportunity and the responsibility to disenthrall each other, to wake each other up, to um, to start looking at ourselves in a as a whole, and to start thinking of ourselves as the um, not the owners of the earth, not the stewards of the earth. That was a popular term, and I look at some of my early videos. I use steward language. If you look at my early books, I use steward language. It's like, but even that's too presumptive. We don't know enough to be a steward. I think we are getting smart enough to be able to get out of the way. And if we can even do that, the Earth is going to be doing a lot better. All the other species will be doing a lot better. And everybody, all the other species will be saying, it was about time for them to wake up and act like the mature children they are, as opposed to the immature children that think they can do anything they want to do, and there's no consequences to that. So we can um, disenthrall ourselves. This has two different pieces to it. One of them is, what are the elements? What are the things that keep us in thrall? What are the things that keep us um, in the trance that we're in? And then what are the things that um, are the elements of awakening, of showing that I'm working with a new deck of cards or a higher state of consciousness. Um, and this is a question, which means this is I've got this timed really well. I'm right at the time. It's time for me to shut up. So, uh, what are your energy leeches? What are the things that when they attach to you, consume your energy and don't necessarily give you anything back in return? Um, and I want you to think about this in the context of uh, different aspects of your being. Um, what are your physical energy leeches? One of mine is the fact that I've got a number of comfortable sofas in my space, and I'm not afraid to use them. Um, they will sap my energy just sitting here reading a book or sitting here going to sleep. What are your emotional energy leeches? That can be as trying and traumatic as um, having things that drain your emotional energy or give you false positive emotional energy. Same things is true for relationships. The same thing is true for your mental activities. But I'm not going to tell you mine. It's now time for you to tell us yours. Now, we're right at the cusp of now I'm going to go ahead and divide you into groups. And one of the reasons I'm dividing you into groups is that um, uh, when I'm running my mouth, everybody tends to shut up. And I'm flattered in some ways, but I mean, we're here for all of us to learn how to be leaders. And one of the places to practice that leadership is right here, right in a group, right um, in what I hope to be a safe um, uh, environment. And if it's not safe, whoever's not making it safe, haul them out and beat them up. Um, that's you see teeth. That's my humor. Okay. So I am going to divide you into just two groups, and that means there's will be three or four of you in each group. Uh, One of the rules of me doing this is don't talk to me. If I happen to be in your room, I am there as a lurker. My video will be off, so you don't see surprised and shocked looks when you talk when you say things. Yeah, she said what? Um, uh, and so I don't get drawn into the conversation because I'm going to, whatever the conversation is, I'm going to skew it. So, and I will be floating between rooms. If you see me leave a room or come into the room, it's not because of anything that you said. It's just that it's not my time to move on to the next room. And speaking of time, this is going to be a really quick exercise. I don't want to spend an awful lot of time on it. Um, and hang on. Um, I don't know if I gave you the question. I said, "What are your energy leeches?" Yeah. Okay. So we're just going to spot them right now. I'm going to put that language right into the chat right now, so you can refer back to that. And boy, do I have a bunch of screens open. Um, um, okay. And um, I will now. And for those of you who, if there's anybody who just landed on Earth and don't know how to do the Zoom breakout rooms, um, when I hit create, you're going to be asked to go into a room and you'll have, I'm going to say 6 or 7 minutes. I'll be listening to the conversation to see how it's going. And if, uh, uh, when I say come back, you're not going to have a whole lot of choice about that. You get snatched back out of the room. You'll have a minute to wrap up thoughts. So here we go. And I don't see, oh, I'm not. That's one more button to push. Um, I should be seeing people disappearing from the main screen, which is a good thing because you're choosing the other screen. And now I'm talking to myself, which is good.
That kind of thing I find very challenging, you know. So relational leeches. I would say dealing with people that are really demanding, really irrational, really volatile, or kind of all over the place emotionally a lot of the time, you know. Difficult people. I try to get the difficult people out of my life. I've tried to get them out, and several of them keep sneaking back in or wanting to sneak back in. So I find that to be kind of challenging, you know. So mental challenges, stuff I don't understand. If I find the vocabulary really difficult, that can be a real challenge. Spiritual challenges, kind of all of the above, you know. Living life on this planet with humans, you know, I find very challenging in a lot of ways, you know. Holonically, that I'm kind of drawing a blank on. I would say because my experience mostly with the holonic energy in this group has been very positive, you know. Maybe just leeches when I'm not feeling open, I guess I would be the best way to say that, you know. If I'm too distracted by my challenges in life, you know. Spatial and temporal. Crowding. I get very, consumes my energy to be in really dense crowds. If I'm getting bumped around a lot, it's just like, get me out of here. So, and I guess that's it. So I don't want to take more than my 2 minutes. So.
Greg, do you want to go? You go before me because now yeah,
Okay.
you go
Yeah.
before me.
I was going to kind of take issue with the whole idea of energy leeches. The example that Sharif used was like on the couch reading a book. And I don't need to direct my energy like I was a machine. So, um, you know, like having friends is very important to me. I put a lot of time and a lot of energy into it, and I get a lot back. So it's not uh, reaching. I exercise. Um, you know, uh, so in any event, I spend a lot of my time expending energy on other things besides saving the world, and I get a lot out of doing that. So. Uh, I want more of my energy to go to creating a world that works for all beings. But in any event, Stacy, I want to make sure you have some time.
Well, I'm still trying to figure out the answer to that question. So, I mean, so I can relate to what Angie said. I definitely don't get enough exercise. I mean, I've
Um, Right. And isn't it interesting how when there's something physical going on, you know, um, yeah, we put our attention on that and it's hard to not be attending to that.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Well, interestingly, what I chose to do was I chose to frame it as an adventure in greater resilience.
hmm,
And I just, I just flowed with it. Resisting it wasn't going to change it, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, but it did alter my days. Things that I thought I was going to get done in June were just sort of like, not happening.
Mhm.
That sort of thing. But being
Yeah.
at peace with it at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I've run into some people who have gotten some health diagnosis and sometimes when something's come up for me, I've treated it like, oh, okay, that's a bump in the road. Well, let's just take care of it and move on. That's not going to define me but it seems that some people are like, they like take it on and then it's like it becomes them or something. It's interesting how the mind sometimes, without having that beyond focus or a different vision, they get stuck in that story or that whatever. And
And I
yeah.
think that's it on the relational, emotional. I can get stuck there. It's like I'm processing it, but sometimes it takes a long time to process. And then I think to myself, I've been doing my inner work for decades. I'm someone who's pretty aware. And then I think of the world and, the disruptions that are probably in store for a system to break down so that something else can emerge, sort of like Kali Ma, so that the phoenix can rise. And I just keep thinking everybody has different sensitivities, different things impacting their life, and different levels of maturity, emotional IQ, and so forth. How is this really all going to play out? And I found disenthrall.
Welcome back to the main room. Remember, I told you make sure you wrap up your conversations because you get snatched right back. Um, some apologies for my abrupt entries and departures because there are lots of stuff going on in the background, and it all got taken care of. All the kitchen, all the fires in the kitchen got taken care of. Um, and I did get a chance to hear a number of comments, which I thought were really interesting. Um, and I I wanted to before we go to the second part of the question, um, I want to talk about the first part of the question, which was um, Greg asked the question, like, what are energy leeches? That there are things that he chooses to spend his time on. Is that considered an energy leech? And I would say absolutely not. Um, uh, how one spends one's time is one's that's how you spend your time. It becomes an energy leech when it's the thing that prevents you from moving forward. So um, I can, as and uh, lie down and take a siesta, which is very, very regenerative for me. I can overstay my time taking the siesta, or I can spend all my time siestaing and not any time doing anything. So whether this is my way of recharging my batteries or my way of dispelling my batteries is something are two different things. And we're going to be able to, hopefully within the next hour, um, focus down and see whether something is really an energy leech or is just a part of your background. Yeah. It may just be that none of you experiences any leeches. Anybody want to raise their hand? I can point it out on you. Okay. That, um,
So now I'm starting to think about how would I have answered differently in the breakout group if
mhm.
I had that definition.
Ah, okay. Well, you get to answer this question again. Um, um, uh, the um, the fact that I am the weight that I am means I try to eat good, healthy food. I probably eat too much of good, healthy food. And every once in a while, chocolate ice cream and potato chips wind up in my cabinet. I don't know who puts them there. I mean, this is probably the same person that comes in every night and messes up my desk. Yeah. Um, but I've changed the locks a number of times, but it still happens. Um, so our challenge is um, taking that joke and not making a joke out of it. Um, of recognizing, yes, I like to eat good, healthy food, and I also eat potato chips. And um, I am, I'm sorry, potato chips beyond the recommended nutritional amount. There's a nutritional label on the side of your potato chip package. You know how many chips that is?
Not many.
Three.
Ken?
Yeah, if you eat beyond three potato chips, you're not. If you sit down and eat the whole bag, but these, I only buy healthy potato chips. Okay, time to be serious. Get to the second question. Um, oh, I'm sorry. Some of us think of ourselves on the mental field of being informed citizens, and some of us overspend our time fixating on certain characters in our political scene, and that, however your fixation turns out, that becomes an energy leech for you. Okay, and we need to cut that down or stop it. Let me ask you a question of the whole group here. Um, how many of you watch news on a regular basis? Okay, Becky, we're going to find out what that
I
means.
listen to news. I never watch.
Okay, so how many of us How many of us watch regular broadcast video news? Okay, you're well on your way of the news diet. Okay, how many of you listen only, but you don't watch, but you listen regularly? Okay. And JL, we're going to figure out what that means. Um, how many of you, like me, only reads headlines and not get involved in listening or watching? Okay. Um, and how many of you do none of that and rely on somebody else to tell you what's going on? And yeah, there are people on that are in our Catalyst meditation group for whom that's true. Um, And what I'm going to be asking you to do is for each one of those things, take another step down from down from that process. Watching video of other places where things are happening is not recommended by a long shot. It inflames you. Um, Even listening to the sound of certain people's voices is inflaming. And when your body gets inflamed, good things are not happening. Um, so remember I said I was doing really well on time. Now I'm not. So let me shut up and get to the next question. Um, how do you detach from that which consumes your energy and spirit? Um, I'm going to let us respond to this as the whole. I'm not going to put you back in your breakout rooms. I think that a part of that has to do with this definition of energy leeches that I provided for you, and that is that you um, become very conscious of what and how you are doing with that. You become conscious of how many potato chips that you are eating. Thomas More, who wrote the book Care of the Soul and then some sequels to that, was saying, if you have this desire, I'm paraphrasing, but if you have this desire to um, eat a quart of ice cream and then you start feeling guilty because you're eating the ice cream, he said, go ahead and eat the entire quart. Just eat it. And while you're eating it, think about how you're feeling. Think about why you are doing that. Think about, is this occurring the way that you wanted it to occur? Is this happening on a level that you want it to happen? And he said, basically use the ice cream, which could be an energy leech, as a way of awakening. Okay. So we had a discussion of our movie choices. And I watch some fairly violent movies, and I'm very conscious of doing it. It's like there are a lot of people in my orbit that won't watch movies like this, and I'm watching it. What am I getting out of this? What is the point of the movie? What is is there some other way I can get this done? Can I be conscious? Okay. If there's something that I actually am trying to detach from, like I don't want to do this anymore. I never want to eat another potato chip. I'm not saying that. I just said that, but I'm not saying that. What do you do? And I am going to put this whole question up in your chat box so that I can see all of your faces. And you can answer from there. Answering means someone raises their hand, turns on their microphone, in some kind of way gets interactive. Karen.
Well, I guess the question that's in the back of my mind is, why do we want to detach or from things that consume our energy and spirit?
Um, Maybe you don't. Okay. The question um, the question is how conscious you want to be how conscious you will be in the world as our world goes through the challenges it's going through right now, and it's what's going to happen in the future. Um, you say, I've got myself managed the way I want to be managed. I watch as much television as I want to watch. I eat as much food as I want to eat, and once in a while that's even healthy. And I'm okay. And I'm acting like everybody else around me, and everybody else around me is acting like they're okay, so I must be okay too. Um, and if that's where you want to be, if you're conscious of the fact that that's where you want to be, fine. I'm not judging that. If you believe that that is equipping you for what's happening right now, and you can see what's happening in the world right now, and it's also equipping you for what's about to come, and you can actually see what's about to come right now. Um, okay. I spent an inordinate amount of my time growing up trying to convince people. I sounded like Chicken Little, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. And then I realized there's an awful lot of people. In fact, the majority of the people on the planet don't care if the sky is falling. They actually don't care if the sky is falling on them as long as it's falling on everybody. Okay. Um, some of us, though, are thinking that it doesn't have to fall on us. We're thinking that if it does fall, there are responses that can be made. Um, um, my analogy of the Titanic. When the Titanic hit the iceberg, it didn't break apart and fires, like explosions, etc. It scraped the iceberg and popped the rivets on a bunch of the plating on one side of the ship and kept on going. And people kept on with their lives. The people who were in first class continued to get their first class service. The people in storage and steerage, all the way in the bottom, all of a sudden noticed that things were getting wet. Um, and after a while, the deck starts leaning a little bit. And even while the deck is leaning, people are looking at each other like, I wonder what that means. When people were ordered to get into the life rafts, they didn't do it. Many, many, many didn't do it, and those were ones who died because they were expecting something else to happen because these things don't happen to me, and I'm not prepared. I'm not physically prepared. I'm not mentally prepared. I'm not emotionally prepared. I'm not relationally prepared. I'm not prepared in any way to think outside of my bubble. Um, and that is probably the most succinct way I can say that's why we're talking about this. Um, um, that my friend Larry Dossey, who wrote a whole bunch of books, so just pick one, um, talks about having a high boggle threshold. And what he means by that is that we will be facing many mind-boggling situations, and your primary job is not to be boggled. Just, just don't. Just opt not to do that. Um, you see the spaceship that actually lands that you can actually take pictures of, and different kinds of beings come out of the spaceship. Um, you won't be you're like, okay, well, there's a spaceship. Let's do something. And do something won't mean, oh, let's get our guns and defend ourselves, because your consciousness of awakening means, I'm okay, I'm not being threatened right now. Let's see what happens. You know. Um, um, this is interesting. I have, some of us are in our daily sessions, and some of us are in our weekly sessions, and some of us are not in any session. I'm trying to remember what I said to which group in terms of our sessioning here. Um, uh, and I guess I can't do that. So I'm gonna what I was about to say. I'm gonna take back here. I'm gonna see if I see a bunch of microphones on now, and I didn't see the order in which they came on. So I'm just gonna say Becky first, JL second, Jenna third, and I'm gonna put Greg fourth. Okay. So
I
Becky,
think I may have been fourth.
um, we'll keep my order. Um, and so not somebody's coming in. They just changed my whole order over here. So who did I say first? Becky? Yeah. Okay.
Um, so I was going to answer the question about, how do you get news or media or not or whatever. And I said, because it doesn't feel quite right to me to have no idea what's going on out there. However, I also recognize I definitely have a limit. I can only take so much. And then when I feel myself hitting that limit, I start to look for things that I can feel good about that are happening, because there's a lot of good stuff happening out there. I am kind of baffled why so few people seem to realize it. Because yeah, they'll dig a little, but it's not that hard to start to find this stuff. And so that's why it wasn't like, oh, I don't do media. It's like, no, I just am very selective about a little of the crappy stuff, and then let's look for things that are working well, that are taking us forward, that are moving us in the right direction.
Um, Number one, yes. I consult 2 to 5 different energy sources. I do this online. I only and the first one is always the BBC, although I'm ready to move them to a lower category. Uh, and I'm only reading headlines. Okay. And I ask myself, do I know about this situation? Like it says, LA wildfires. Okay. So do I know about this situation? If the answer is yes, I go on to the next headline. Why do I need to read that again and again and again? This gives me an opportunity to see to see a big picture. However, if I'm going to most mainstream media like BBC, CNN, etc., let me put Al Jazeera in there. You need to have a non-Western perspective. Um, I'm still going to be getting lots and lots of news that's defined as negative things happening in the world. You need to have some other sources within BBC, CNN, etc., but also other sources. Um, we're ahead of ourselves. This is what I want to talk about tomorrow, but we got a little snippet of this today. Um, who else was next? I think JL was next.
Hey, yes.
There you go.
Okay, so
Nice to
I'll
see
go.
you.
Good, awesome. So the reason, and I actually do Becky, like Becky just said, and I probably watch more than Becky does, but I try to balance it out. And I think I heard you say somewhere along the way, Sharif, that somebody's voice will also, do something with your energy. And I find that to be very true. So I do not listen to that voice,
Those
but the
voices,
reason, what?
those voices is not,
Those voices.
yeah.
Woo. But for me, what it does when I watch too much of the news is it disempowers me. I feel disempowered. And so if I start feeling that, and I've learned how to sort of put this shield between myself and the words that are coming from my computer, because that's where I get my news from, that I don't have to have a reaction to the news. I simply can listen. So that's one of the things that I do. The other thing that came up for me was one of the ways that I deal with this sort of situation is to not get disempowered is I set intentions. And so the intention for me is to focus on XYZ, whatever that is, and to not let all the noise, it's not easy, but not let that noise come in and be distracting. And I know all of you guys are probably thinking the same. No, that's not true at all. Never mind. I was going to say, I live in a very diverse neighborhood, and it's a little bit scary because of ICE. And therefore, my mind often goes to when I hear a certain truck drive by or something like that, I'll go, okay, which one of my neighbors is in danger and who do I need to help in this situation and how can I do it? And, even making plans like where could I hide them? What could we do? How can we feed them if they're, all of those things, which are also a really big distraction. I do know somebody who's been taken, but by ICE that shouldn't have. They lived here for 20 years in their own home. So all of those are that kind of, I think what you're talking about, Sharifa, but this kind of ball of emotion and distraction and disempowerment.
Yes. I want to respond to everything that you just said. Um, I'm going to I'm not, okay, for two reasons. I said we were going to take a break and we're going to actually take a break. Um, um, but also we have tomorrow. So I'm I'm realizing you have a little bit of a pressure relief valve there. But I do want to say, in terms of focus, when choosing your focus, the other thing that's really important is to choose your time. Do not turn on any kind of social media, or no, you should call it anti-social media, that has an infinite feed, and that's most of them, without also turning on a timer and deciding how long you want to spend on that feed. And you have to be fairly rigorous with regard to this. I find myself in a feed for 45 minutes, an hour and a half, and I think 10 minutes has gone by. And my feeds are funny. They know what to feed me. So,
The
um,
dogs and the cats and the horses, right?
you keep the dogs, just the cats.
Okay.
And and comical situations, um, um, and it's like, okay, I'm going to watch another. I'm going to watch another. I'm going to watch another one. It's like, okay, and an hour and a half went by, and that hour and a half belongs to Facebook. How much of my life does Facebook own? Now, when I turn on a 10-minute, or even, I'm being generous, a 20-minute timer without a snooze on it, okay, put it away from you so that you got to turn your eyes from the screen in order to stop it. You can begin to exercise some level of control over your own life. The rest of what you said, we will, I'm going to hit a pause on. Jenna.
Did Greg go?
No, I want Greg to go last because I'm going to then go to the bathroom.
Okay. I sort of forgot some of what I was going to say. I think a
You
bit
can
of
wait until
Becky.
after the bathroom.
I think a bit of Becky, more so some parallels with Jael. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name.
Yeah, you're good, JL.
Jael. Okay. Uh, I think for me, we don't know what's coming. We don't know what's going to show up in any of the places that each of us is. Uh, and yet there's this desire to somehow try and be somewhat prepared. Um, I live in what I perceive as a friendly neighborhood, but I don't know everybody on the street. Um, and sometimes I think about things like, are there certain human necessities that I maybe should stockpile so that I have something to barter with? What if the grid goes down? That sort of thing. But I think self-preservation is a key facet of being a human or any life form. Um, it's a mystery. I mean, that in itself has become something that's constantly active in the background. And each of us is choosing how much we allow that to be present as being on the front burner and how much to keep it just sort of spinning in the background. I learned just this week how to curtail the time I spend on my smartphone news feed. A lot of it is not what I'm aligned with. And a lot, it's been like you have to go through so much to finally get to the content I want to get to. For me, I'm interested in content about environment and water. And I discovered yesterday or today that I can short circuit into that and not even look at any of that other stuff. And so that's like, whoa, I wish I would have found this a year or two ago. But now I know that I can do that. And there's so much going on in all those facets. I really don't know how to manage it. I also like to set intentions. Sometimes I will read something that I know is controversial simply because it's something I want to take into consciousness and ponder how could this be responded to differently?
Mhm.
Whether it's intention or prayer or whatever. Sometimes I use it as an exercise in that regard. So it's a real mashup for me. I'll stop there.
Okay. Um, I have comments to make, but maybe I'll make them when I come back from the bathroom. Greg.
Okay, so I think, I said that the central part of my life is collecting friends, cultivating relationships. And so, um, a lot of what I do, like when I'm doing mindless chores, I tend to be listening to the news, but I'm aware as like Israel and Gaza fills the airwaves that more people have been displaced, more people are starving in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Yemen and Myanmar and all sorts of places that aren't in the news daily. So, but uh, I've trained my Facebook algorithm to show me stories of kindness, right? To show people helping each other out and so on and so forth. And that's what I try and do in my real life, just being a good friend. And um, giving that karmic energy to the universe. And I know, so I plan to talk to my neighbors about Portland's neighborhood emergency team about how to protect ourselves in the event of a magnitude 9 earthquake. Right, this is one of the few places in the world capable of a magnitude 9 earthquake. So yes, I listen to a lot of news, but I feed myself a lot of kindness. I share kindness with my friends, and I'm really preparing for the next life. I happen to believe strongly in uh, something akin to the Christian God's kingdom, although I'm definitely not a Christian. But I am preparing for an eternal journey of life, love, and service to our universe.
Okay with me. Number one, number two, you reminded me of one of my news feeds, my daily news feeds. It's called 1440. And if you're not a 1440 subscriber, I would suggest you do that. You get a morning feed every 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm usually up when it comes in, and it gives you some headlines from around the world. But they have a regular feature called Human Kindness, and they have a story about human kindness somewhere in the world, and people generally send them the stories, and so it's somebody not from an editorial office that is saying that. And I just I it puts a smile on my face.
11.
That's me talking now. Uh, and the theory is that means, are we ending at the top of this hour here? The theory is yes. It's a pretty good theory because, like I said, I'm not going to feel like, oh, one more thing, and because we got one more thing time tomorrow. And I am so I think that answers your question. So one more thing time might go 2 or 3 minutes. It's not going to go half an hour. Um, uh,
Okay.
okay.
I'm on East Coast and I have something I have to complete before midnight. So,
Oh, well, there you go. Hopefully this will motivate you to get it done in 5 minutes. So,
well, it's not something that I can manage the pace of.
oh, okay. Well, and speaking of managing pace, let's continue on unless anybody's got a question about our last segment there. Like I said the first half hour was right on time, and the second half hour was time is now we're demonstrating exactly how fluid time is. I want to talk to you about something I've called our consciousness management system. And when you're talking about your time and how you use your time, etc., um, you don't necessarily know about or think about or have any idea of what your consciousness management system is. Um, you but you manage your own consciousness, or someone else manages it for you. In this society, someone else is managing your consciousness most of the time. I think that is generally an unhealthy situation. In many societies, your consciousness gets managed by your priest or your minister or your shaman or your whatever. In our society, it gets managed by people on Madison Avenue who will tell you in very interesting ways what to do and how to do that. The notion of our consciousness management system, um, uh, the key element for our consciousness management system is our meditation. Think about on a personal level, people like Mahatma Gandhi, people like Martin Luther King, people like Václav Havel, people like Nelson Mandela, who spent years, decades inside of a prison. Mandela in solitary confinement, never talking to another person who was not his oppressor. Um, being stripped of everything that keeps a human being together. And yet, coming out of that experience, for each one of them, coming out of the experience and smiling. In order for you to smile through that experience, you've got to have something in your core element that kept you going while you were in it and keeps you going through it. One of the things that Havel said was when he was in a Soviet prison, every day he made his bed. Every day he straightened his room. Every day he did whatever he could do within his power to deny them the notion that they had him in prison. It's just my room. I'll keep my room clean. I'm going to keep my room neat. Havel never saw my rooms. Um, and but from this point of view, even in the in with the attempt at each one of these systems to dehumanize, they kept their humanity. In each one of the systems to oppress, they kept and nurtured this little tiny spark of freedom that was inside of them. And that's the thing that kept them going. I think it's necessary to have support systems. And in some ways, this and our daily catalyst meditation, our weekly catalyst meditation is part of my support system. Okay. Um, I'm not in a prison. I can walk out the door whenever I want to. I can interact with people however I choose to. But interacting with people inside the context of the breaker society is just operating in a prison that has invisible bars that keeps you confined in certain interesting ways. Um, the thing about the Catalyst meditation is that I hope that it is a holonic management system. I hope that it is a system that is where other consciousnesses are um, are helping with the process of um, management. I had an experience just a couple of days ago, which I thought was pretty interesting. Um, I live in the Lloyd Center, and for those I don't live in the Lloyd Center, there are people who live in the underground parking decks of the Lloyd Center. Not recommended for anybody. I live in the Lloyd district. I live in the Lloyd neighborhood. And there's a nice park that I don't go to. And one of the reasons I don't go to is that there are a number of street people who um, affect my experience of the park. And it got to be um, a negative experience to go to the park. And I did something, it was kind of I'm called by this experience in Alaska that I'm about to enter into. And it's a whole other story. For those who don't know, I'm going to Alaska. I'm going to Alaska for the weekend. Not quite sure why I'm going. It's going to be interesting. I get to hang out with Hilarion, and that's about it. Um, and now I have to say more about that. Um, but I decided the other day to go to back to this park. I call it a vest pocket park. It's a really small block in right outside the Lloyd Center, which means it's compact. And instead of walking on the path, I walked off the path and I was walking on the dirt, on the soil, on the grass. And every tree I walked up to, I put my hands on the tree. So for a moment or two, I had um, my hands, one or both hands, on the tree. And to the extent that I could identify the tree, I actually identified, that's a maple tree. Okay. Um, um, I could identify the tree, and with my hands on the tree, I would look all the way up into the leaves, into the canopy. And by the time I got to the fourth or fifth tree, I realized that the trees were really appreciating this, because I think of all the people who walk through that park, I'd say the overwhelming number of them paid no attention to the trees. None. I mean, like no positive attention, no negative attention. They were obstacles in their way to go do something else. And something else could be and was drug sales over here, and um, people talking to themselves over there, and um, the security people trying to be, well, our security people try to be nice, and they're trying to interact with people. Um, and but everybody's doing their thing. Oh, there's a couple of parents there with kids in the water fountain, and but nobody was dealing with the trees. So by the time I made a circuit of this park, and I literally interacted, like on a physical level, interacted with each one of the trees, I could feel the canopy of the trees, and it was um, there's a communication going on, and the communication was positive, although I didn't have the ears to hear it. Um, and one of the things that I heard loud and clear is, next time, leave your backpack. Um, that I need to back up to the trees. Putting my hands on is one thing, putting my spinal cord on the tree is another. And so looking forward to a spinal adjustment here. And we'll see kind of where and how that goes. Okay. So we've got this notion of a holonic management system where I'm letting the trees manage me. I'm managing the trees. I am boosting their energy simply by being there. and putting Sharif on the trees, and then they are boosting my energy, and they definitely did by them putting tree on Sharif. Um, the catalyst meditation is another means of another holonic management system. I want to do some holonic exercises, and I'm trying to figure out what they are, and I'm doing a lot of rereading and rewatching of Rupert Sheldrake's stuff. Like we can do some of Sheldrake's exercises or take them to another level. Anything else? Any other way that we want to manage my consciousness, manage our consciousness, and manage the consciousness of the whole for the good of all? How do we want to do that? I'm not going to divide this into groups because I think we did a really good job of speaking up and speaking out before. This time I can see Jenna is in the lead on our race here. Or or did you just happen to have your microphone?
Um, I happen to have it left open,
Okay.
but
And then Karen.
I will say this. I am not yet able to discern what nature elements are wanting to share, say, communicate. But I feel there is a rapport. I notice, for example, that pines have a very different energy, a group of pines, and almost a different temperature. I have a 25-year-old tree in my home that is 9 feet tall. And I have other plants that have been with me even longer. And so there's not a conscious like, oh, they just said this, but there's some symbiotic relationship there.
Okay. I real quick and then Karen. Um, my second wife, her father planted a tree when each of his children was born, which I thought was like a really cool gesture. So in his front yard, and they lived in, I mean, the whole idea of living in one house for like your whole family's life. I mean, who ever heard of a thing like that? But he had these three trees, and uh, when I first went to her family's house, she pointed. She said, "That's my tree," and I'm like, I wonder how that works. Uh, yeah, to have to grow up with something. This tree was like 30, 40 feet tall, um, to grow up with something and have it as deeply meaningful of that tree was planted the day I was born, and to have that as a continuation. Anyway, Karen.
The last so many minutes, what I'm kind of getting a feel for is kind of an energy kind of discussion. And like where is our and in that vein, a a couple of things that I was recalling was how it changes my way of viewing things if I remember, oh, we are all one. And it also changes my way of thinking. I think it was Jerry Jampolsky. He wrote about love versus fear. And I think the energy, the highest energy is love. Um, and uh, and so sometimes if somebody is acting or doing, I was in a work situation, I had read some Jerry Jampolsky, and I started to apply this and to look at whenever this person presented, um, I I looked at that as, oh, that's a call for love. She's in fear and she's acting this way. And so part of my practice was to send love to her higher self. And it was really interesting. After doing that for 2 to 3 weeks, she left me alone and never came back with the behavior that was yeah, that was an issue. So I'm wondering, as we move into this new whatever might be coming down the pike, is it moving into mm, trying to be in a energy level or in a vibrational level or something that resonates at a higher level? Or anyhow, I'm kind of, as you're talking, I was beginning to kind of, because there's a lot of stuff that's coming up that is fear-based. Even getting ready for the earthquake is, I mean, on the one hand, it's like, well, I want to be prepared, but I don't want to be in the mindset that, uh, yeah. Anyhow, there's some things that I think we do, or, we're prepared for, but it's not that we necessarily have to like focus on it all the time. We just like get stuff together and then go on with our life and um that kind of thing. Anyhow, those are some of the thoughts that have popped in as we've been talking.
Well, one of the things, one of the things that is very, very true is that um, those who want to manage your consciousness, one of the principal tools is fear. Um, Fear that I'm going to lose my life, fear that I'm going to lose my property and my money, fear that I'm going yeah, JL brought the situation up about neighbors losing their freedom, but some of us could be talking about losing their freedom. Um, and That fear becomes reactive. One way to react to it is to shrink away from it. The other way to react to it is, I'm going to face this down. And a third way of reacting to it is being conscious of it and wondering and asking the question, is this mine to deal with? Um, I've given the example before, back when I was studying martial arts, um, close to half a century ago. um, One of the things that the teacher did first thing in the class was line us up against the wall, and he would throw staffs at us. So staff is just like take a broom handle. Now, broom handles make great staffs, and so he would throw broom handles at us. And if it was going to hit you, you should block it. But if it's not going to hit you, don't do anything. Don't react to it. Now, that's easy to say when you don't see this thing hurtling toward you and it's not going to, you know, puncture your skin or put your eye out or something like that. But it could hurt really a lot. I mean, he didn't he wasn't gentle with it, so it could hurt. And we would react to the potential of the hurt, not to the thing actually hitting us. And it took us weeks to just stand there and say, yeah, as you see it coming to you, is it going to hit or not? Um, some of us never managed to do it. We couldn't master our fear that much. I mean, sometimes he's aiming at you, and sometimes he's not aiming at you. So yeah, that it was pretty interesting. Um, but that also reminded me of something else that JL said, and that was reminding me of the situation years ago, decades ago, in Nazi Germany when they went rounding up Jews, and people, especially, well, people in many countries started to harbor Jews in their attics and in their basements and in their barns. And the thing that was um, important about that is that many of them didn't like Jews. They weren't doing this because it was a popularity contest. They were doing it because it was the right thing to do, because they did not want to be the subject of oppression. They were not going to take their privilege status. They're like, they're not going to round me up. They're not going to, that this was not a I'm okay issue. This was not even a they're after the Jews issue. They're not even It's not even I like the Jews issue. It was a human issue. And are we going to stand up when there's a threat to our humanity? Um, and Greg, I saw that you've got your that you're ready to go, but let me say one more thing here. Um, this happened a couple of times. Once during the Rodney King riots, and his second time in the George. Every time I say George without having his last name in mind, I think of George Foreman, and that gets
Floyd.
that gets grills in my mind, and yeah, Floyd, yeah. Um, that there were televised um, attacks on whites by blacks. And I was listening in lots of different communities as people try to justify, try to um, try to rationalize these attacks. And the bottom line is an attack is an attack. And the bottom line is um, if I've got to stop and look at the race of the person who is saying whatever they're saying and doing whatever they're doing, I'm not paying attention to what's going on in my heart. And I can't go to Chicago where one of the attacks took place and find the people and talk to them. But I can talk to the person who's brought it up to me right here in Portland and say, that was wrong. That was bad. That was something that's below our humanity, and we shouldn't be trying to explain it. You know, um, everybody has that thing inside their heart that says, I can do wrong. There are no exemptions. There are no get out of jail free tickets, regardless of what Netanyahu may think. Um, I've been to Auschwitz twice, and I learned a lot there. And I'm sure Netanyahu has been there and taken the tour and put the candles in the right spots, etc. But I wish he'd go with me because I think he'd learn an awful lot about himself. And all of the people in the IDF, and not on the same tour, but I take all of the folks in Hamas on a tour and have them actually try to find a way to listen to their own humanity. What the right thing to do is being told to them right here, right now, and they've covered it over. And at some point in time, we are going to pull the covers off. I think we're getting ready to do that in the near future. Um, I'll talk about timing at another point, but if I keep going like this, Greg's going to get 30 seconds, and then I'm going to say, oops, I got to go now. So, Greg, why don't you go for it?
Sure. I basically have two things I want to say. There's about a dozen aphorisms that I live by, and I think Sharif and I are the only ones here who know Noel McInnes. And he said something that I think about every day. I don't always get what I'm looking for, but I always get what I'm looking from. So, you know, I don't put on my seatbelt or drive carefully because I'm afraid of having a car accident. I do it because it's my gift to the world to be a safe driver,
Mhm.
right? And the same thing with preparing for the earthquake. I don't do it because I'm afraid of the earthquake. I do it because I want my neighbors to know what I know about how to get by in a situation where we're likely to be without electricity and civil services for a couple of weeks, right? And the other thing that I want to say is that I've been testing out saying this to all my friends. I just came back from a vacation. I must have said this 30 times. The society we have now is a caterpillar. The society we're going to have is a butterfly. You know what happens inside the chrysalis? Basically, the caterpillar dissolves into a goo while these new structures called imaginal cells build the butterfly. I like to think of myself as an imaginal cell in the creation of butterfly culture, but I know I could just be some of the goo,
Mhm.
right? So I'm not afraid of winding up being the goo. I'm just doing all I can to make the best choices in every moment. And I must admit, I'm afraid of pain, but I'm not afraid of dying.
Um, okay, so now it's two things. Um, um, so two things. Uh, One has to do with the earthquake idea. And you may have heard me say this before. Again, I'm losing which group I'm saying these things to. So some of you get these two times, maybe even three times, then that's the way this is going. But this is something that happened. When was that big bad earthquake down in the Bay Area? 89, I think it was, 90, somewhere in there. I was on this coast at the time, so it had to be 89 or 90 or more. But I had read the book Ecotopia, and for those of you who haven't read the book, it's a million years old now, but I still recommend that you read it. And I have friends uh, I had friends who were friends of the author, Ernest Callenbach, and they were going to introduce me to him, which they did. And so I went down to the Bay Area, and he and I had scheduled some time. And I'm a little late because I'm steering around some of the damaged areas that the earthquake had caused. Um, and I get there, and I'm saying, just as a matter of starting a conversation, um, the earth, there was a bad earthquake. I'm steering around all this damage. And he says, um, oh, and how much, I guess this disrupted your life. And he said, no. He said, my wife and I keep um, day packs under our porch so that we can have access to it if the entire house falls. And in the house, in the day packs, we have it's not they're not day packs, they're camping packs. We've got tents and rain gear and collapsible shovels and um, all the things that we need to water bottles, etc. All the things that we both of us need to get up into the hills. And I'm like, that sounds pretty um, prepared. And then he says, well, and we get up into he says, when we get up to the hills, we have a place where we have stashed building materials, seeds for an entire year, um, the water filters that and it's on a year-round stream so that we'll have fresh water. He's going on, and I'm like, this is a prepper nut here. I mean, this guy is. I mean, he's on the far end of the spectrum here. And he said, we have enough the right building materials to be able to build a cabin, to be able to do such and such. And I guess he saw the look on my face, and he said, Sharif, I think there's going to be another earthquake. And so and he's looking at me like, okay, what do you think? You know, I think that if the earth shakes some more, I'm just gonna go outside for a couple of minutes and come back in and maybe dust off my furniture and pick up a couple of books and keep going, you know. Do you really think that that 9.0 is going to happen? And the thing I would say to Chick if he were still alive is um how's this tie in with what your neighbors are doing? Because all of us make it, or none of us make it. Okay, that was number one. Number two is okay.
Can I bounce off of that?
Yes.
Okay, so I agree
Oh,
that
I'm
it's
sorry, and Jen, I know Jenna, we're taking out of order, but she wants to respond to that specifically. Yeah.
okay. So I agree with that, and that's why I have a large garden. And it's like how long can my community, which is, a few blocks here, how large I live in a larger city, but I'm just saying the people that I know in my community here, how long could we live off of my garden? And we actually could do a fairly decent job. We may not like all the food, but we could live that way. But and a lot of my neighbors don't have gardens. I mean, down there, okay, some do, some don't. But we all think about, how do we be community here? And I think I said this earlier, some of my neighbors don't speak English. So, we have to make sure we know where's the interpreter, where's the healers, where's the food, all of those things that are going to keep us alive. And then the outside ring, how do we incorporate them into our community when it's time to bring them into?
Mhm. And thinking about that outside ring, um, how do you bring them in right now, as opposed to waiting for the fecal matter to hit the propellers before you start thinking about which way is it facing? My
I,
friend Richard Flyer, I don't know who's Richard. Anybody know Richard Flyer? He's trying to do some really. I'm supporting what he's trying to do, which is bringing people together across their divides right now on things that are compatible to them right now. We have a tendency to focus on that which separates us, as opposed to focusing on what are the possible things that can connect us? Um, and as Ilarion has promised me in this excursion, this adventure I'm about to go on, um, with him in Alaska, I'll be interacting with some pretty darn basic people. And if I focus on all the ways that we're different, I'm going to have a very different experience than if I focus on all the ways that we are the same. Um, and people are, I think that there are many people looking for the connections. Um, and given the fact that we now have 4 minutes left, Jenna, um, I'm not going to do my second thing I had to say. That'll get saved till tomorrow. So I don't know if you still got something you want to.
Mine's a little bit different, but it still has to do with a threat, widespread. So back in the late 90s, I was in my first metaphysics class and working with affirmations and intentions and so forth. And it was a summer that was very dry. I live in between Baltimore and Washington, D.C., which in terms of geography is really a tight, small area. It's like one huge metropolitan area that's grown together that's over 10 million people. So it had been a very dry drought summer. And a weather person quipped one night, what we really need is 3 hurricanes to come up the coast this year to reestablish our water table. And my immediate reaction was, you just sent out this crazy, absurd invitation.
Mhm.
And this is crazy to even entertain that what that would potentially entail and the damage it could create as a way of. And so I started working on affirmations and intentions and shared it out. I mean, what that weathercaster did went viral before we knew what viral was, because it was, like 25 years ago. And I didn't have access to be a spokesman on a public media out to that huge metropolitan area. But I created an affirmation that I shared out with a few friends and said, feel free to share this. And I think it's in part for me, it was power of intention. And what I talked about in that intention was, if there are 3 hurricanes that come up the coast, they can park themselves out in the Atlantic and just bathe us in days of nice, gentle rain without any damage, without disruption to the whole area, without loss.
Mhm.
And there were at least 2, maybe 3, that did come up the coast that summer, and they did park themselves out in the Atlantic. And so that for me was like a grounding rod, that it does, the count of people involved doesn't have to be the factor.
Mhm.
Intention and consciousness has a lot of power, even if it's a small nucleus of people. And that is one way that we really can work. It's not the only way, but it is a way we can work together.
That is the way I would like us to be able to think and act in this world. There is space on this planet, in this world, for all. That means that some may have more. That's okay. Some may have less. That's okay. But the question is, are we balanced in some way? When I say I should have everything, you know, I don't want it. I should still have it. I should control it. I need the power, etc. Then I'm in not in a balanced way. And we'll be talking about harmony and balance tomorrow. Um, and we live in a society that revels in people being out of balance. Okay. Um, when it'd be easy just to say, I'm uh, no hurricanes. I I I don't want to have to rearrange my flower bed. I don't want any hard rains at all. I want, I want, as opposed to asking what's good for all the beings here. Um, yeah, how do we get the water table to go up and not destroy Washington, D.C.? Oh, well, not destroy the Baltimore area. Okay. Um, the yeah, I have my own battle going on right now, literally in my kitchen and in front of my eyes. I've got a really juicy assortment of fruits and vegetables because I got a million fruit flies, and I've had a conversation with them. The conversation is, okay, your populations have to go down to like minuscule levels. And if you don't send your population down to minuscule levels, I'm going to do it for you. And I've promised them that, and the populations went down. Seriously, I'm really serious. I'm happy about that. I need to tell them what the level is that I will tolerate, and beyond that, um, I got a vacuum cleaner, and I'm not afraid to use it. Um, and it's a long walk up that hose once I start working this vacuum cleaner. And so how do we become one? What does it take for that to happen? What does it take for us to recognize that we're trying to churn human energy to recognize that Israelis and Palestinians are one, just an extremely dysfunctional family? That it takes more than the consciousness of a handful of people over here and a handful of people over there who happen to have their hands on the buttons of a lot of different weapons, that there's a whole other consciousness and we can mobilize it. We've done it before very successfully. We know how to do this. It's time for us to actually do it. This is the doing part of all the things that we've been talking about. And on that note, I won't ask if there's any other conversations or any other things people want to bring up because you will. So you save it, write it down, and we'll begin our conversation tomorrow. I'm going to ask a few more of the small group questions, and I think we have the same number of people scheduled for each one of our four sessions. So I look forward to seeing you, and we may see a few more folks. And I look forward to us communicating. See you tomorrow. Bye. See you.